These hands, my hands that drove the nails into his flesh, are the same hands I now raise in prayer. How can a man like me be forgiven for what I've done? I executed the one I now call my Lord. When I look at the scars on my palms, scars earned in battles for Rome's glory, I also see his blood, blood that won't wash away, but which, instead of condemning me, sets me free. It's a story I must tell, a story I myself could never have believed possible. My name is Quintus Cornelius Albinus. I am 43 years old now. I was a centurion in the Imperial Roman Army, stationed in Jerusalem. For those who don't know what that means, a centurion commands a century, approximately 100 soldiers. I was respected, even feared. My voice was law to my soldiers. My orders were carried out without delay, without question. I commanded hundreds of men, fought in numerous battles, and executed dozens of condemned men with these rough, calloused hands. I was born to a family of soldiers in Rome. My father served under the great General Marius, and my brother died in Julius Caesar's campaigns in Gaul. My destiny was clear from childhood: to proudly wear the uniform of the Roman legions, to expand and defend the empire that stretched from Britain to Egypt, from Hispania to Syria. I knew no other life. At 15, I was already a recruit. At 20, an officer. And by 30, I had been honored with the rank of Centurion. I had seen much in my life as a soldier. Emperors come and go, provinces rebel and are suppressed, and we soldiers remain Rome's unwavering shield. When Emperor Augustus died and Tiberius took power, I was already a veteran of the battlefields. I suppressed revolts in Pannonia, guarded the empire's borders on the Rhine against Germanic tribes, and was eventually sent to this distant and difficult province, Judea. Before arriving here, I thought I had seen it all. I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. The gods know I'd seen enough horrors in my life to harden any man's heart. But what I experienced in Jerusalem changed everything. Everything. I remember my first day in Jerusalem. The sun burned bright, dust rising from beneath our sandals like a fine cloud. The city was an impressive sight, even for someone like me, who had seen the great cities of the empire. The high walls, their majestic temple gleaming in the sun, the narrow streets filled with merchants and pilgrims from all corners of the world. It was their Passover, a religious festival when Jews commemorate their exodus from Egypt. The city was suffocated with people. Judea had always been a problematic province for us Romans. Unlike other conquered peoples, the Jews never fully accepted their masters. Their strange religion, with a single invisible God, made them consider themselves special, chosen. They refused to worship our emperor as a god, refused to adopt our customs, and always waiting for a savior, a so-called Messiah to liberate them. I personally despised them for their stubbornness, for their bizarre rituals, for their vain hope in a liberator who, I believed, would never come. I considered them primitive, superstitious. I remember laughing with my comrades about their belief that a god would care about the fate of mankind. Our Roman gods were powerful but distant. They didn't meddle in mortal affairs except for their own amusement or revenge. I spent my days maintaining order, collecting taxes, suppressing minor revolts, and yes, executing criminals on crosses. It was the most degrading and painful death we Romans ever invented. It had a dual purpose: to inflict a slow, agonizing death, but also to serve as a warning to anyone who might dare to rise against Rome's power. It was routine for me. I still remember checking the wood of the cross, testing the solidity of the nails, choosing the execution site so it would be visible to as many passers-by as possible. It was a procedure like any other. I was efficient, professional, merciless, the mechanical perfection of an elite Roman soldier. At night, after finishing my duties, I would drown my memories in wine and the company of slave girls. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, I would hear the screams of those I had executed. But I had learned to ignore them. I had learned to feel nothing. I had no family, no roots. My home was the military camp. My brothers were my comrades in arms. I offered sacrifices to the gods out of obligation, without truly believing in their power. I had seen too much suffering, too much injustice to believe that the gods cared about us. My life was empty, but organized, cruel, but simple. But then I met him, this Jesus of Nazareth, and nothing was ever the same. I first saw him in the crowd, preaching. It was an ordinary morning. I was patrolling the market near the temple when I noticed an unusually large gathering around a man. He didn't seem different from other Jewish teachers, bearded, wearing their traditional clothes, speaking their Aramaic. But something in the way he stood, in the way he spoke, drew the crowd like a magnet. I didn't pay much attention at first. He was just another Jewish prophet, I told myself. Just another madman claiming to speak for their God. Jerusalem was full of such people, especially during festivals. I ordered a soldier to stay and observe, in case the speech incited rebellion, and continued my patrol. But in the following days, I began to hear more and more about this Jesus. There were rumors that he healed the sick, made paralytics walk, gave sight to the blind. Some even said he had raised the dead. Nonsense, I told myself. Jewish superstitions. And yet, something drew me to him, a curiosity I couldn't explain. Then came the day when he entered Jerusalem riding on a donkey. The crowds acclaimed him as a king, throwing palm branches and clothes in his path, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." It was a dangerous spectacle from our perspective. Any such public demonstration risked turning into a revolt against Rome. I reported the event to Prefect Pilate, who ordered us to watch this Jesus closely. "It's Passover," he said. "The Jews are always more restless during this period. Watch this agitator and report any suspicious activity to me." In the following days, I shadowed him. I saw him preaching in the temple, defying the authority of Jewish priests and elders. I saw him overturning the tables of money changers and driving out vendors from the temple court. He was provocative, but in a way unlike ordinary rebels. He had no weapons, did not call for violence against Rome. And yet, his words had a power I had never encountered before. One evening, standing outside a house in Bethany, where he and his disciples were spending the night, I heard him talking about the kingdom of God. Not about an earthly kingdom, not about overthrowing Rome by force, but about a kingdom of hearts, of souls. He spoke about loving enemies, about forgiveness, about eternal life. I laughed to myself then, what nonsense! And yet, his words haunted me in the nights that followed. Then came the night of the arrest. One of his disciples, a certain Judas Iscariot, betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver. The temple guard, accompanied by a few Roman soldiers, arrested him in the Garden of Gethsemane. I didn't participate in the arrest, but I was summoned in the morning when they brought him before Pilate. I saw him bound, beaten, spat upon, mocked. The Jewish priests accused him of blasphemy, of claiming to be the king of the Jews, an accusation that could be interpreted as rebellion against Rome. And yet, He stood there with a dignity that amazed me. He didn't fight back. He didn't beg. And his gaze pierced me like a sword. But there was no hatred in his eyes, as I had seen in so many other condemned men. It was something else, something I couldn't understand then. Was it compassion? For me? Pilate tried to release him. I saw with my own eyes how our prefect, a man known for his harshness, repeatedly tried to find a way to release this Jesus. "I find no fault in this man," he declared. He offered the crowd a choice: to release Jesus or Barabbas, a notorious criminal. To my surprise, the crowd, instigated by the Jewish priests, demanded Barabbas's release and Jesus's crucifixion. Before the final sentence, my soldiers flogged him with the Roman whip, a terrible instrument that tears flesh to the bone. They mockingly dressed him in a purple robe, put a crown of thorns on his head, and gave him a reed as a scepter, laughing and shouting, "Hail, King of the Jews!" I watched and felt, for the first time in my military career, an inexplicable discomfort. Something wasn't right. This man wasn't like the other criminals I had executed. When Pilate ordered me to oversee the crucifixion of this Jesus of Nazareth, I accepted the order with the professional indifference with which I had executed so many others. It was a Friday, before their Passover feast. To me, it was just another Jew who imagined he was special, another rebel who had to die for the empire's peace. I took him to Golgotha Hill, the place of the skull, on the outskirts of Jerusalem. It was a hot day, and Jesus, already weakened by flogging, fell several times under the weight of his cross. I forced a passerby, a certain Simon of Cyrene, to carry his cross. Arriving on the hill, I directed the soldiers who stretched his body on the wood of the cross. I supervised as the hammers struck the nails, piercing flesh and bone, fixing him to the cross. His cry of pain was no different from many others I had crucified. And yet, somehow, it touched me more deeply. By my own commands, we raised him between two ordinary thieves. Above his head, Pilate ordered an inscription in 3 languages: Latin, Greek, and Aramaic. "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." Then I stood there, at the foot of his cross, casting lots for his clothes, waiting for him to die, as on so many other workdays. But something was different that day, something I had never seen before. As he hung there, in agony, I heard his words that shook me to the core. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Was he praying for me? For me, who had commanded his execution? For the soldiers who mocked him? For the crowd that demanded his blood? What kind of man prays for his executioners? I felt a pain in my chest, as if a lance had pierced me. Not him. For hours I remained there, watching as life slowly drained from his body. At one point, he spoke to one of the thieves crucified beside him, promising him a place in paradise, as if he had the power to offer such a thing. I laughed, but my laughter was bitter, forced. Then, at noon, something extraordinary happened. The sky suddenly darkened, as if it were night, not midday. It wasn't an ordinary eclipse. It was something supernatural, frightening. The darkness lasted 3 hours. People around the cross began to whisper in horror, some running back to the city. I was scared myself, though I tried not to show it to my soldiers. What kind of man was this, whose death could darken the sun? When the light returned, Jesus cried out loudly, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani?" My God, Why have you forsaken me?" It was a quote from their scriptures, I learned later. Then, after being given vinegar to drink, he cried out again, "It is finished," and gave up his spirit. At that moment, the earth began to shake violently. Rocks split, walls cracked. Later, I learned that the curtain of their temple, a massive fabric separating the Holy of Holies from the rest of the sanctuary, had torn in, two from top to bottom. It was as if nature itself was protesting against what had just happened. Something broke in me at that moment. I felt as if the old Quintus was dying along with the man on the cross. The words came out of my mouth before I could control them. Truly, this man was the Son of God. My soldiers looked at me in amazement. I, their centurion, who had always despised the religion of the Jews, had just proclaimed the divinity of this crucified Jesus. How could I, a Roman centurion, utter such words? And yet, at that moment, I knew it was true. I knew I had just executed, not a criminal, not a rebel, but someone divine. After ensuring he was dead, I allowed his body to be taken down from the cross. According to Roman custom, I accepted the request of a wealthy Jewish counselor, a certain Joseph of Arimathea, to take the body for burial. I saw him wrapping Jesus' body in clean cloths, placing it in a new tomb cut into rock, and rolling a huge stone to seal the entrance. Everything had to be done in haste, before sunset, when their Sabbath began. By Pilate's orders, I posted guards at the tomb. There were rumors that his disciples might try to steal the body and then claim he had risen, as he had apparently predicted himself. I chose my most trusted soldiers and gave them strict orders. No one was to approach the tomb. No one. I returned to the barracks in a state of extreme confusion. What had happened there on Golgotha? Who was this Jesus, really? And what did the words I had spoken mean? Truly, this man was the Son of God. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, heard his prayer for our forgiveness. The next day, the Jewish Sabbath, I remained in the barracks, refusing food and drink. My comrades were worried. They had never seen me like this before. Quintus the steadfast, Quintus the iron-hearted, was now a man tormented, lost in dark thoughts. On the third day after the crucifixion, early in the morning, one of the soldiers guarding the tomb came running, pale-faced and trembling. "Centurion," he shouted, "the tomb, the stone, it's open." I immediately jumped to my feet and ran to the garden where the tomb was. The other soldiers were there, frightened, confused. The massive stone that had sealed the entrance had been moved aside, and the tomb was empty. The cloths in which the body had been wrapped were there, arranged oddly, but the body was gone. "What happened?" I shouted at them. "Did you fall asleep? Who stole the body?" But my soldiers, men I had known for years, trusted veterans, swore they hadn't fallen asleep. They told of a violent earthquake, of a brilliant light, and an angelic presence that rolled away the stone. They said they had been paralyzed with fear, unable to intervene. In other circumstances, I would have severely punished them for such absurd stories. But after witnessing the darkening of the sun and the earthquake on the day of crucifixion, I was no longer sure of anything. The world I believed to be solid, predictable, now seemed fragile and full of mysteries. I ordered a search for the body, but it was found nowhere. In the following days, rumors began to circulate through Jerusalem. The women who had followed Jesus claimed they had seen him alive, that he had spoken to them, told them to announce to his disciples. Then the disciples themselves began to claim they had seen him. that he had eaten with them, shown them the wounds from the crucifixion. The Jewish priests spread their own version. The body had been stolen by disciples while the soldiers slept. Pilate, eager to avoid more disturbances, officially accepted this explanation and ordered the incident forgotten. But I knew the truth about my soldiers. They would never have fallen asleep during guard duty, risking their lives. Something truly extraordinary had happened at that tomb. The days that followed were a nightmare in which I couldn't find my place. I heard voices, saw faces in my dreams. Always his eyes, that gaze that seemed to see through me. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I felt like a man hollow inside, as if everything I believed about the world, about gods, about life and death, had been called into question. Jesus' disciples, who had initially hidden in fear, now appeared in public, speaking openly about his resurrection. I sometimes saw them in squares, preaching with a conviction and boldness that amazed me. How could these simple fishermen, these uneducated people, speak with such authority, such certainty? What had they actually seen? At first, I considered all these stories about resurrection to be illusions, hallucinations of grieving disciples who couldn't accept their master's death. Or perhaps an elaborate lie to continue the movement he had started. Until I saw him myself. It was a few weeks after the execution. I had obtained permission to travel to Caesarea for a few days. I needed to get away from Jerusalem, from the memories that haunted me. I was walking alone on a road, tormented by doubts, by guilt, by confusion. The sun was setting, casting long shadows on the dusty road. And suddenly, I saw him standing before me, not as a ghost, but in flesh and blood, with the marks of the nails in his hands, the marks of the nails that I had driven in. He was dressed simply, like an ordinary traveler, but his face, that face I had seen distorted by agony on the cross, now radiated a peace and light that I cannot describe in words. I froze, unable to move, to run, or to speak. My mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. It was impossible. I had seen him die. I myself had checked his body before allowing it to be taken down from the cross. No man could survive such torture. And yet, there he was, real and alive, looking straight at me. I fell to my knees, trembling, expecting his divine anger. Instead, he reached out and touched my shoulder. His touch was warm, real, not an illusion or a dream. "Peace be with you, Quintus," he told me. "Do not be afraid." "Lord," I whispered, using that word with true reverence for the first time, How can you stand before the one who executed you? How can you not strike me, not curse me?" "Your faith has saved you," he answered. "I did not come to judge the world, but to save it. What you saw on the cross, what you confessed then, was the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life." But how?" I asked, tears beginning to stream down my face. "How can you rise again? How can you forgive?" "Because love is stronger than hate, Quintus. Because forgiveness is stronger than revenge. Because life is stronger than death." Then, in the most unexpected gesture, he took my hand, the hand that had ordered his crucifixion, and placed it on the wound in his side where a soldier's lance had pierced him to verify he was dead. "Touch and see," he told me. "Do not be unbelieving, but believing." When my fingers touched the scar in his side, something broke within me. I wept for the first time since I was a child. My tears washed away the imaginary blood from my hands. Years of hardness and cruelty, years of indifference and contempt. Then I understood. Everything I believed about power, about justice, about gods, was wrong. True power isn't in taking life, but in giving it. Not in dominating, but in serving. Not in destroying, but in forgiving. Go, he told me finally. Tell others what you have seen and heard. Tell them that death has been defeated, that forgiveness is possible, that the kingdom of God is near. Then, as unexpectedly as he had appeared, I saw him no more. I didn't see him leave or disappear. One moment he was there, the next he wasn't. But I felt his presence around me, in me, transforming me from within. I returned to Jerusalem a changed man. I immediately requested an audience with Pilate and reported what I had seen. The prefect looked at me for a long time, evaluating me. "Quintus," he finally said, "you are one of my best officers. I have never considered you a dreamer or a madman. But what you're telling me now, what am I to do with this information?" "Excellency," I replied, "I know only what I saw. This Jesus, whom we crucified, has risen. He is alive, and he truly is what he claimed to be, the Son of God." Pilate sighed deeply. "Here's what we'll do, Centurion. I will not report this conversation to Rome. You will continue your duties as if nothing happened. What you believe about this Jesus is your personal business. But I warn you, be discreet. Not everyone will understand or accept what you're telling me." I was grateful for Pilate's understanding. I resumed my duties, but my heart was no longer in them. I now saw the world through different eyes. Every prisoner, every beggar, every person I met, I now saw them as Jesus would have seen them. Precious souls, worthy of love and respect. In secret, I began to seek out Jesus' disciples. At first they were suspicious. How could they not be? I was the Roman centurion who had overseen their master's execution. But when I told them about my encounter with him, when I described our conversation in detail, they gradually accepted me. My new faith couldn't remain secret for long. My soldiers noticed the change in me. I was no longer the harsh and merciless centurion they had known. When a soldier beat a prisoner without cause, I severely punished him. When another soldier robbed a Jewish merchant, I insisted he return the goods and ask for forgiveness. "What's happened to you, Quintus?" my lieutenant, Marcus, asked me one evening. "Since the crucifixion of that Jew, Jesus, you've been a different man." "Maybe I am," I replied simply. "Maybe I've seen something that has changed me forever." "Be careful," he warned me. "There are whispers that you sympathize with his followers, that you've been seen talking with his disciples, that you no longer participate in sacrifices to the gods." These are serious accusations, Quintus. He was right, of course, but I could no longer live a lie. Not after I had seen him. Not after I had experienced his forgiveness and love. In the weeks that followed, things worsened. My Roman comrades avoided me. Some turned their backs when I entered a room. Others laughed and whispered behind me. "Quintus, the Jew," they called me mockingly. "The centurion who believes in the crucified God." The Jewish priests, on the other hand, were furious that a high-ranking Roman officer was confirming the resurrection story. They sent delegations to Pilate, demanding my transfer or dismissal. Pilate resisted for a while, but the pressure was mounting. Then came the day when I refused to participate in an official sacrifice to Emperor Tiberius. It was a mandatory ceremony for all Roman officers. To refuse meant treason, punishable by death. But I could no longer worship a man as a god, not after I had known the true Son of God. I was demoted, beaten, threatened with death. Some of my former soldiers, who once trembled at my orders, now spat in my direction when I passed. My family in Rome found out and disowned me. To them, I was dead. Before being sent to Rome, I had one last chance to say goodbye to Jesus' disciples in Jerusalem. They gathered secretly in a house in the lower quarter of the city. When I entered, conversations stopped. Some still didn't feel comfortable in the presence of a Roman, much less a centurion. But Simon Peter, the fisherman who had become their leader, stood up and embraced me. "My brother," he said, "I've heard what happened to you. You suffer for his name, just like us. You are one of us now." He offered me bread and wine, explaining that these were symbols of Christ's body and blood. As we shared this simple meal, I felt a connection deeper than any military camaraderie I had ever known. These weren't just associates or colleagues. They were brothers and sisters in a new family, God's family. "What will happen now?" one of them asked. "Will they send you to Rome? Will they execute you?" "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but it doesn't matter anymore. I've seen the truth. I've known forgiveness. Even if I die, I know I will be with him." Through the influence and money of Nicodemus, a member of the Jewish Sanhedrin who had secretly followed Jesus, I was transferred to Caesarea Maritima instead of being sent to Rome. There, away from the tensions of Jerusalem, I could have a chance to start a new life as a common soldier. Caesarea was different from Jerusalem. Being a major port, it was more cosmopolitan, with people from all corners of the empire. Here, my new faith attracted less negative attention. There were already small groups of believers in Jesus, both Jews and non-Jews, who met in private homes to pray, read the scriptures, and share bread and wine in his memory. I joined such a community, led by a believer named Philip. In my free time, when I wasn't on duty as a soldier, I participated in their meetings, helped care for the poor and sick, and began to learn the Jewish scriptures that spoke about the Messiah. It was amazing to discover how their prophets had predicted Jesus' coming, his sufferings, and his resurrection centuries before. My military career, however, stagnated. I was always overlooked for promotions, always assigned the most unpleasant tasks. Some superior officers considered me a traitor, others just a madman. But it no longer mattered to me. I had found a higher purpose, a deeper loyalty. One day I received important news from Jerusalem. Peter and John, two of Jesus' main disciples, had been arrested for preaching in the temple. Miraculously, they had been released during the night. The church in Jerusalem was growing rapidly, despite increasing opposition from Jewish authorities. Later, I learned that Paul, formerly a persecutor of Christians but now an apostle after his own encounter with the risen Jesus, had been arrested in Jerusalem and sent to Rome for trial. About a year later, during the bloody reign of Nero, I learned he had been executed, along with many other Christians in Rome. In all these years, though I was actively involved in the Christian community, though I shared my story with anyone willing to listen, I never forgot my origins. I was still Quintus, the Roman centurion who had ordered Jesus' crucifixion. It was part of my identity, a constant reminder of the transformation I had undergone, and the physical scars on my hands, earned in so many battles for Rome, were now to me a symbol of Christ's scars. When I looked at them, I remembered the nails I had driven into his hands, and the wonder of the forgiveness he had offered me. Many years have passed since then. My hair has whitened, The strength in my arms has weakened. I am no longer the fearsome centurion of old, not even the efficient administrator from Stephanos's warehouses. Now I am just an old man who shares his story with anyone willing to listen. I now live among both Jews and non-Jews alike, sharing the simple life of a fishing village near the Sea of Galilee. Some of the elderly Jews here had personally known Jesus or witnessed his miracles. We exchanged stories, memories, reflections about what we saw and experienced. In recent years, I've spent much time meditating on my life, on the strange and unexpected path I've traveled. What have I learned from all this? That there is a power greater than Rome's, than that of the sword and legions. That there is a love that can transform even the heart of the most hardened soldier, of the most devoted enemy. That forgiveness is more powerful than revenge. That love is more powerful than hate. When Jesus said on the cross, "Father, forgive them," he wasn't speaking just for those soldiers mocking him at that moment. He was speaking for me, the one who had ordered his execution. He was speaking for Saul Paul, who would persecute his church. He was speaking for each of us who has ever hurt him through our actions, through our indifference, through our selfishness. And when he said, "It is finished," he wasn't just announcing the end of his physical suffering. He was announcing the end of an era of separation between man and God, between man and man. He was announcing the beginning of a new life for all who believe, a life in which we no longer live just for ourselves, but for Him who died and rose again for us. This is the message I share with anyone willing to listen. Whether they are simple fishermen from the village or pilgrims who have come from afar to see the places where Jesus walked, or Roman soldiers stationed in the region, I tell them what I saw, what I heard, what I experienced. I tell them about the man who went to crucifixion with dignity, who forgave his executioners, who died not with a curse, but with a prayer on his lips. I tell them about the darkness at noon, about the earthquake that shook the earth at the moment of his death. I tell them how I proclaimed him the Son of God right there, under the cross, before I heard or knew anything about his resurrection. And, most importantly, I tell them about my personal encounter with him after the resurrection, how he showed me the wounds in his hands and side, wounds produced under my command. How, instead of condemning me, he forgave me and called me to follow him. If you have listened to this story now, you may wonder what relevance it has for you. You are not a Roman centurion. You didn't participate in Jesus' crucifixion. Perhaps you don't even believe in him or in God. But I tell you this, if there was forgiveness for me, the centurion who crucified Christ, then there is forgiveness for anyone. If my heart, hardened by years of wars and cruelties, could be transformed by his love, then any heart can be transformed. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, how far you feel from God. He is seeking you, just as he sought me. He loves you, just as he loved me even when I was his enemy. He is calling you, just as he called me from darkness to his wonderful light. This is my testimony. This is my story. I, Quintus Cornelius Albinus, the centurion who executed the Son of God, bear witness. There is no heart so dark that his light cannot penetrate it. There is no sin so great that his love cannot forgive it. There is no life so broken that his power cannot restore it. I invite you to reflect on this story, to take it into your heart, to ask yourself if you too need the same forgiveness, the same transformation that I experienced. If you've listened to my story until now, please share it with others. Like this message and follow this channel for more testimonies of those who have met Jesus and been forever transformed, because this is the power of our testimony: to bring hope to those who have no hope, forgiveness to those who don't believe they can be forgiven, and eternal life to those who fear death. May the peace of Christ be with you, my friend, and may your spiritual eyes be opened to see the one who died for you and rose again, waiting to meet you just as he met me.